It is a very nice boat. I've got a big double block.
I think the whole thing began when we actually went to have a go sailing on Spinaway, didn't we?
We stumbled across Spinaway on, it must have been Apollo Duck or something, just as you flick through and say, let's do something tonight, and then you see that there's this nice little gaffer. That would be nice to do. And then it's down in Cornwall, let's have a weekend away and see the boat at the same time. Now this was about 4 years ago, and we went to Corsands on the Cornish side of Plymouth Sound, and had a go on Spinaway. We hadn't sold the large boat Helmi, which was a 46-foot ketch built in 1948 in Finland, and we thought, well, although this is a nice little gaffer and we want to downsize, no way we can buy this until Helmi's sold. 3 years went by, and then we were racing in Cowes Classics with Helmi, and halfway through the week somebody rang up from Devon and just said that they'd like to buy her. We had, as I said before, we had various nutters who were asking to buy Helmi, and this just seemed to be another nutter, but in actual fact it was a genuine chap who wanted Helmi, didn't want a survey or didn't want to look at it. He'd just seen all the photographs and was happy to just take her if we were prepared to deliver her to Plymouth, which seemed to ring a few bells. Hang on a minute, Spinaway's down in Plymouth as well. So having agreed with this other chap to sell Helmi, we then rang up Graham Butler, who had Spinaway, and said, was she still for sale? As if so, we'd buy her. And he thought I was the nutter then, just like that.
We want her.
But
no.
It seemed to dovetail quite nicely. So last September we sailed Helmi down to Plymouth, swapped the sleeping bags over from Helmi to Spinaway, and sailed Spinaway back. As we came into Plymouth, we handed Helmi over just as this dolphin surfaced, which that was a sign that everything was okay. Is that right?
It's absolutely right, yes. It's Helmi's.
So she's in a new home down in Plymouth, and Spinaway's got a new home up here in the Solent, where she hasn't been before. She's always been in the West Coast, although she did do a big trip all the way around England, Scotland, down the east coast of England, through the French canals into the Mediterranean, through the Straits of Gibraltar, into a river beginning with G in the south of Spain, where she stayed for a couple of years, and then the previous owner to us, Graham Butler, saw her down there, picked her up, sailed her back across the Bay of Biscay to Corsands in Cornwall, and he worked on her there, and that's where she stayed until she came down here. We had Helmi 20 years. We purchased her in 1994. Helmi was a boat that was built in Finland in 1948 for some professionals in Estonia. Estonia was in the process of being taken over by the Soviets after the war, and a lot of professional people wanting to disappear and get out. The Soviet government had seen a few boats trying to escape with people on board, and they had put the word out to the Baltic countries not to assist any boats that were trying to do a runner through the Baltic and away. But there were two families in Estonia who arranged for a boat to be built in Helsinki in Finland. The boat was built in 1948. They did a quick trip across from Estonia to Finland, which was about 60 miles I think, jumped in the boat and basically did a runner all the way through the Baltic Sea and arrived in Yarmouth in 1949. Decided they weren't going to go any further. They were supposed to go to New Zealand, but the Isle of Wight was far enough, so they decided this is where they were going to stop. And at that point the British government decided that the boat was now an import and they wanted some import tax. They didn't have any money, and at the time one of the crew was talking to a local dentist in Newport on the island and told him the story, and he said, well, he'd pay the import tax, but what he would want in return would be the boat. So that deal was struck, and the chap kept her until he was 80 something in 1994 when he sold her to us. The older he got, the more he sold off, he saw chunks of the mast off, so it was a short stumpy mast on the main mast, and the mizzen stayed the same size, but he did keep all the fittings. So when we acquired her, Bellows put another so many metres on top of the mast, and we had all the fittings, and it was re-rigged to how it was originally formed. And we sailed and raced, campaigned her for 20 years, as I say. So that was Helmi's history, and then from here she's now down in Plymouth.
So what does she like to sail then?
Spinaway, so far remarkably stable, we think.
Yeah, very stable.
We haven't given her a real good test because this is our first few months with her being sailed in anger, but seems to settle down very nicely. We've had the gunnels under the water, and that's quite reassuring, because once you know she can go over that far and stay there, then you don't mind doing it again.
And interesting enough, she hasn't got guardrails, but we haven't missed them, have we?
No,
we feel
missed
really
the
quite
guardrails.
secure.
It does feel very safe.
Yeah.
Mike does all the stuff up front, and you don't find a problem, do you?
Haven't fallen off once.
Yet. But no, she sails okay. With that, we have a big Jenica thing that we were given, and when that was pretty much full wind, that must have been a good breeze that particular night.
Yeah.
And you can let go of the helm, and she just stayed on course,
yeah,
which was surprised everybody. So it's a learning curve totally. We don't know what she goes like against other gaffers, because we haven't raced against other gaffers yet. This week will tell us whether she's a good boat or just a dustbin.
She's not a dustbin. Don't even say such a word.
But we'll find out, you know. But sailing wise, we think we've got good hopes that she'll sail okay, but we're not out to sort of win any prizes or anything. We just want to have a good time out there, and she seems to be the type of boat that can give us that.
But you've really downsized, isn't it, from a massive to tiny?
It doesn't feel like that actually, does it?
She's as wide as
Helmi was.
As Helmi. Helmi was 3 metres wide, 46 foot long. So 10 foot wide, 46 foot long. This is 29 foot long, but still 10 foot wide.
And as Mike says, because the storage is so good, you know, there's less clutter around, and it just feels very compact, doesn't it?
And because you have such a long bowsprit, she sails like a bigger boat anyway.
The bowsprit, she's 41 foot overall with the bowsprit. It's 35 foot difference.
Yeah, it's not much, is it?
There we go.
But she's got a lovely homely feel to her.
She has. She's a friendly, homely, comfortable boat.
That's because you
I love her.
make nice cushions, don't you?
And very sound and very dry.
For a boat that was built in 1889. She's lasted okay.
A lot drier inside than a lot of plastic boats, without doubt.
Are regattas important to you?
I would say yes. The thing we found with Helmi is Helmi was really kept up well together because we raced, and I feel that if you race a boat, you're going to make sure it's in pretty good nick. You know, your rigging sound, and nothing against cruising at all, but sometimes you will go cruising when the winds are light or when the sun's shining and the seas are flat. your boat's still got to be in good condition, but when you race a big boat like Helmi was, it had to be in pretty good nick, and you made sure it was in good condition. So, although that's not the only reason for racing and doing regattas, it's quite nice to be part of a crowd, and you can go off cruising, no problem there, but it's also nice to participate in regattas and so on. With Helmi, we went down in '92 and did Brest, and no, 2000 we did Brest in Helmi, and we've done other regattas. And being in Cowes, based in Cowes, we're sport for choice, really.
So the other good thing about that is you meet other much more experienced gaffer owners and you can pick their brains.
Yes,
and
definitely.
you do learn a lot. My name's Mike. I'm one of the regular crew on Spinaway. I'm 61 years old. I'm an Islander, and I've been sailing with Andrew and Angela for about 4 years now. My experience in sailing before that was largely with traditional Bermuda rigs, and in particular the Clipper boats, which are the around the world racing boats, and so I sailed a couple of legs with them. Clipper is the company that's owned by Sir Robin Knox Johnson, so that was fun, but it's a very different experience to sailing a traditional gaff. Having said that, the traditional gaff has a lot more things to do, a lot more bits of string if you like, so it's very interesting sailing. Whereas although Bermuda rigs are much more simple, there's a lot of things that you can do to tweak them to try and enhance the performance of the boat. One of the things you do is you create a trim book, so that for any given wind condition, sea state, and the angle at which you're sailing to the wind, you actually register in a book where you get the best performance, and then you start to tweak things to see if that improves performance or whether it actually doesn't make any difference. You record all these things, and that creates a reference book, so that you can always refer to that reference book for any given conditions to try and tweak the best performance out of the boat. It takes about a month to put a reasonable trim book together, but thereafter it's very useful. It's quite a chore actually doing it, because there's a lot of information to be recorded, but it's a very useful tool.
And are you going to produce a trim book for this gaff rig?
No, I'm not.
But I mean, she's not your typical racing boat, is she? I mean, did you buy her as a cruiser for yourselves?
We bought her as a boat that we could handle, just the two of us, but English summers being English summers, how many weekends you're going to go sailing off into the sunset. So by racing, you're going to use the boat quite frequently throughout the season. And being a gaffer, and the Solent Gaffers Association have different rallies, different races and so on, so we know that we've got half a dozen gaffer events to participate in. And when I speak to cruising people, I do speak to cruising people who's in November who said they only used their boat 3 times last year, because the weather wasn't conducive to.
Yeah. So it gives you a purpose and it gives you a focus, doesn't it?
Purpose. That's the way of doing it. It gives you a purpose for doing stuff. And again, the more you use her, the more you keep her up together.
But as far as ladies are concerned, novices, a gaffer isn't ideal, is it? Do you think?
Well, I don't know that I agree. I'm actually really enjoying, along with everybody else, just learning what does what. And there's plenty of jobs on board, so you don't feel like you're an extra. You feel like there's real purpose in being there, and you've got a definite role and you're sort of equal, hopefully, to the others around you.
You don't
in
find
having a purpose,
You don't find there's too many sails and too many ropes.
There are a lot of ropes. I won't disagree with that.
It's quite easy though. It's once.
It's just learning the sequence. Yeah. It's learning the sequence of what happens when once you've got that.
With the Bermudan rig, you have one halyard, so you've got one piece of string to pull the sail up. So that's quite easy. If you look around this boat, you've got about 48, well not quite, but you've got a peak halyard, and there's a couple of bits of string associated with that. You then got what's the right name for it? What's the bit that goes around there?
The throat.
The throat, and all that sort of stuff. you need all these ropes to get the gaff up and the mainsail set. But once it's set, you haven't got to touch them all. So that's when it becomes easy.
Yeah, and the other thing is with a smaller crew, you've got more opportunity to get doing things. Be on the foredeck. I mean, how often did I go on the foredeck on Helmi? Very rarely. So it's nice for me. I get the opportunity to do stuff that I haven't done before.
But also the other advantage of this boat over Helmi is that the working loads on the sheets are much smaller, so it's much easier for Angela to handle those loads. Whereas on Helmi the sails are quite big, so consequently you're dealing with some quite heavy loads, and obviously a man's physical strength is a bit more important.
We did have some big women on Helmi there.
That is true, but
cut that.
Definitely.
Say,
Is that your script?
right.
No, this is a first.
The boat was built. No.
Right, Andrew, you're going to give me a history lesson about your boat.
Well, this summarises it a little there. From what we understand, and we have got a lot of written, documented evidence, she was assumed to be built in Looe in 1889 as a fishing vessel. She was first registered as a fishing vessel as Spinaway in 1891. We've got the documents which actually have got lovely handwritten script, as it would have been in those days. She is an early example of a Plymouth hooker. She fished out of Plymouth. I'm just reading this now. Exmouth and so on. Then she was sold in 1946 for a Willys Jeep, £185 and some petrol coupons. She stayed as a fishing vessel for quite a while. In 1951, however, she was attempted to register her as Spinaway as a yacht, but Spinaway, the name Spinaway, had been taken already, and at the time she was moored on the River Ex, so they just added the letter X to the word Spinaway, and suddenly she became Spinaway X.
And Spinaway was after a famous racehorse, wasn't
Spinaway was a very fast
why the tiller head
racehorse.
has got a horse carved in it.
Yeah, the tiller head has a horse. Some people think it looks like a dog, and some people think it looks like all sorts of things, but it is in actual fact a horse. She was a racehorse that won the St Leger or something like that in 1870 something or other, and that's where the name Spinaway came from. That was there was something else I was going to say which I've forgotten, which you
Interrupted, sorry.
Yeah, it'll come back. I don't know when, but it'll come back.
Is there anything on page 2?
Page 2 would be oh yes, there nothing on page 2 really, except that she I don't know if I've mentioned how she travelled everywhere. I think I did that earlier.
What about when she came from a fishing vessel?
It's just
into
twisted around itself.
Yes, she didn't. She was totally open until the 70s, 1970, when she was just quarter-decked. So she stayed open as a fishing boat, although registered as a yacht, for quite a while. The some of the letters we've received from people who used to sail her. There was one old chap who was well in his 90s and sailed in her in the early 1900s, who remembers fishing from her. He described her as the fastest piece of wood out of Polperro. Obviously she was fishing out of Polperro at that time. That's probably about all I can remember without flicking through all the reams of documentation. You want to interrupt her again, or is there anything else?
I won't interrupt you again.
Okay. Well, in America, there's the Spinaway Stakes, which is a sort of like a, obviously a famous Kentucky type of horse race. I don't know. Horses got a leg at one on each corner. That's about as far as I know about horses, but that's where the name came from.
So she's a thoroughbred then?
She's a thoroughbred.
Fantastic.
A few old nags sailing out. No disrespect.
No way to talk about Brian, is it?
No.
Brian's our other man. Brian's our man who does stuff.
Brian's a one-off.
is the
He's a
man
one-off,
what
yeah.
does. You know,
It's a
so
shame
that's
he's
quite
not here,
good.
really.
Yeah.
That line's not round, Bob, is it?
No, it's fine.